Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining our diagnostic training session today. And what you're about to see is a pre-recorded training session we did over in the United States. But be assured that a lot of the material that we cover is really applicable to any automotive application. So just be aware that yes, it is a lot of North American vehicles, but they will apply a lot of the same principles apply over in the UK as well. Now, if you do have any questions, if you're watching this during the premiere, you can just leave it in the chat. We'll be monitoring live chat. If you're watching this after the premiere, then just feel free to leave a comment underneath the video and we'll get to those as we can as well. So my name is Jason Gabrenas. I'm one of Snap-on's diagnostic technical trainers. I've been in the training department since 2013, traveling around North America, helping techs and shop owners get the most out of their diagnostic equipment. Before I did that, it was a couple years as a diagnostic sales rep at Snap-on, so I had 30 different franchisees I worked with, as well as the shops that they serviced, in order to help everyone get the most out of their diagnostic needs. Then before I did that, it was 8 years at Subaru. So I worked in a dealership, and over time, I guess, just became the default diag guy in the shop. So I always ended up having the drivability problems, the intermittent problems, the weird wiring problems that would show up on those cars. And that's really where I cut my diagnostic teeth, was trying to figure out all those weird head scratcher type cars that would come into my bed. Then before that, a bunch of other miscellaneous wrenching jobs. Been a little over 25 years under hood experience for me. So our topic today is the power of OBD-II information, part 2. So this is part 2 of our 2-part series on OBD-II. So to recap, last time what we talked about was the first half of the screen, the upper part of the screen. So we talked about a little bit of the history of OBD-II and where we came from and where we are today. Then we got another readiness monitors, engine light status, troubleshooter. There's actually inside the Snap-on tools in OBD-II, there actually is a troubleshooter with code tips and such. We talked about data display. Mode 1 is display current data. Mode 2 is freeze frame data. So that is a snapshot of what happened at the time the code set. Mode 3 is displaying your trouble code. So whatever emissions related codes you have in there. And mode 4 is clearing that emissions related data, so codes and readiness monitors and freeze frames and all of that. So now let's get into mode 5 through 10. So mode 5 and 6 and 7 are going to be test parameters, test results, things of that nature. Now, not every vehicle you're going to see is going to really look like this. It's going to depend on what the module on the vehicle supports. So I've noticed on a lot of newer vehicles, they don't even have a mode 5. They just roll mode 5 into mode 6. And some older vehicles won't have mode 10 down here. Some other vehicles may have additional mode 9 listed. There's just a couple different variations, and we'll talk through those in a little bit. But the first one is 5, 6, and 7. They're kind of lumped together there. So mode 5, what that does is that is just for oxygen sensor testers. So the oxygen sensor readiness monitor test. It's going to give you the display the test of the results of that test. It can be used as a report on the condition of single or multiple sensors. If we have more than one sensor on the vehicle, we can do that. So like I said, you may or may not see that mode 5 right there. So in this case, we do. But I can't show you results because my car doesn't have it. Next one, we go to mode 6. So mode 6 is pretty popular out there, especially for trying to figure out misfires, things of that nature. A lot of Ford folks use that for sure. Can be used to find problems in non-continuous monitored systems. So any of the systems that aren't monitored continuously, it's like a 1 per drive cycle type thing, can help find problems in those. Provides a pass-fail for each system or component. Can be used to gauge which monitors have failed at the time. So what monitors have we gone through and which ones have failed. And we can also use it to validate repairs. So after we're done, we take it on a road test and we make sure all the monitors complete, and we can go through mode 6 and see make sure those monitors have passed. So here's an example. Like I said, on my vehicle, I don't have a mode 5, I have a mode 6 and a mode 7. So if we pop in there, we'll see we get things like the oxygen sensor test. That's why we don't have a mode 5, because the oxygen sensor test it would have had in mode 5 are going to be in here anyway. Catalyst monitor, EGR monitor, VVT, EVAP monitor, 20,000s, purge flows, oxygen sensor heaters, misfire monitors, etc. So if we go into the oxygen sensor data, it would be like what we would see in mode 5, but it's just in mode 6 now. So it tells us, is the monitor ready? Is the monitor cycle enabled? And has the cycle completed? And then we can go through the different tests. This one's looking for a lambda value, and it wants to stay close to 1, no lower than 850 and no more than 1.99. So lambda is your air-fuel ratio. Ideally, you'd want it to be at 1. So in this case, we're really close to 1. Another lambda value on the other one, 0.985. And then we have this other test, which it does not say exactly what it is. We could look it up, but whatever the value is, as long as it's between that minimum and maximum and it passes, then you're okay. So that's the oxygen sensor. How about the misfire, general misfire model? So what this gives us is it's going to give us, misfire monitor. Is it enabled? Is it complete? But it'll say average misfires in the last 10 drive cycles. So how many misfires do we have on average over the last 10 drive cycles? And in this case, we have 1. And then if we go down here, misfires in the current drive cycle, we have also a value of 1. So that means we counted 1 whole misfire in this last drive cycle, right? So if it only misfired once and it only detected it misfired once, that's not going to be enough to turn on a light for sure. And of course, it does say down here that it passed. So this could be useful diagnosing a intermittent drivability problem where it doesn't turn on the light. Think I might have a misfire. You could actually go in here and look back at the history of that and see, okay, was there a problem? So it says I had 1 on the last drive cycle. And then another nice thing is we have individual cylinders. So if I go into cylinder 1, we'll see value of 0 on the current drive cycle. Okay. Cylinder 2, same deal, 0. Cylinder 3, over the last 10, value of 0, but over the current drive cycle 1. So this is the cylinder that gave me the 1 misfires on cylinder 3. So now I would know where to look because I can go through all that and I know where to look. And now I can, maybe if it's a drivability issue that the customer is having, and like I said, no codes, nothing else to go on, we could go on that and we could see, all right, well, this cylinder's misfiring. Maybe it was like 300 misfires or something like that. It's obviously going to depend on the car and how it's running, but we can see that one has a count of 1. So that means that cylinder had misfired in this one drive cycle. And then, of course, cylinder 4 should be a value of 0, and it is. So that's mode 6. A lot of different tests we can look at. Like I said, non-continuously monitored, but that's your critical tests. Next one's mode 7. So that's going to be test results for components that are 1-trip monitors. And if it does trip that, if it does go through the test results, any DTCs are going to be pending DTCs. So they're not actual hard DTCs yet, but they will be pending DTCs. And if the pending code does not return after drive cycles, it will, if the problem doesn't return, so to say, it'll clear within 40 drive cycles. If the pending code does return on the next or subsequent drive cycles, it'll move to mode 3 after it shows up 3 times. And when it moves over to mode 3, which would be check for trouble codes, it's going to turn on the malfunction indicator lamp. So if we go in mode 7, like it says here, DTCs detected during the last drive cycle. And of course, we know we had that 1 single solitary misfire, but no DTC is not harsh enough, not enough of a level where it needed to set a pending code. So we're okay there. Then we get to mode 8. So mode 8 allows the scan tool to perform onboard system activation tests. So these are like bi-directional control. Not usually a huge list in there. It just kind of depends on the vehicles, what's supported. Only the supported tests will be displayed. And it controls the ECM to test those components. So I can do a bi-directional functional test, turn it on and off. You're honestly going to get more capability going through the scanner side, right, instead of the OBD-II side. But it is there just in case. It's mandated by OBD-II anyways, but in case you ever did need it, and there might be a couple different systems in here. In this case, we get an evap test and a DPF regen. So those are the only 2 that really show up there. It's going to depend on the vehicle and what's supported again. Then we have mode 9. Now, as I said earlier, in this presentation, we could have multiple mode 9 selections in there. So for this example, mode 9 vehicle information, it's going to display the following ECU information as long as it's supported by the ECU. So it'll show the VIN, which of course is the vehicle identification number, Cal ID, which is the calibration identification, which can be used for certain things, and CVN, calibration verification number, which will be, so the calibration identification will be basically, here's the software version that's on this computer. It's going to be whatever. And then the calibration verification number means we went through it and checked, make sure everything was installed properly on the software and the software is correct, and it should have a calibration verification on it. So that's often used to determine if a reflash is needed. I know at Subaru, they use this quite a bit. They've since changed the way they do it, but I'm going to show you an example in a little bit. And I'm sure there's other manufacturers that do it as well. So lots of vehicle information can be had through here. We got our VIN, of course, Cal ID, calibration verification, ECU's acronym and text name. So on my case, like on my car, I have 2 ECUs that are OBD-II compliant. So it's the ECM for the engine and it's the TCM for the transmission. So it would tell you engine or transmission. Engine serial number supported, exhaust regulation and type approval number, worldwide harmonized OBD support information, ignition cycle counter, and distance travel since EVAT launch. So for example, the calibration identification, if I needed that, it's going to give me this number here. And like I said, I would need that to download a reflash if I needed it for the vehicle. And then there's the other one there for either or. Calibration verification number, those are in there as well. You can actually double check that against manufacturer's information if you need to. Then we have mode 9 in-use performance tracking. So that's going to display the results of monitored tests, such as ignition cycles. How many ignition cycles have we gone through on this vehicle? How many times has the catalyst monitor run? How many times has it passed? O2 sensors and EVAP, same type of thing. So if we go in there, in-use performance tracking, we can see 6,155 engine starts, 1,456 OBD monitoring conditions. So that's when it went into the condition where it could monitor. Completions versus conditions. Right, so sometimes more completions than conditions. So we can just see how many times it was run and how many times it can. And then we get to mode 10. So mode 10 is also mode 0A on the computer. So it's kind of a weird hexadecimal computer thing. But that's mode 10. It's required of all emissions related DTCs, and the DTCs cannot be cleared by a scan tool. Try as you might, you're not going to be able to clear those codes. It's going to be in there until the component passes the onboard monitor, whatever monitor it happens to be, whatever test the computer needs to do in order to make that code set. It needs to go through and pass those tests before those can clear. So no matter what you do, no matter what scan tool you use, you cannot clear these codes. That is useful though, if you're trying to diagnose a vehicle that somebody else has already had their hands. So maybe the customer disconnected the battery to turn off the engine light, or maybe they got their codes scanned somewhere, like maybe a parts store or something, and they cleared them. And now you need to work on it, but you need a direction to go in. So you can just go through, pop into mode 10 and see, hey, have they been cleared? And is there a problem in there? So for example, the one example in the last class somebody gave me was, the auction vehicles or something of that nature. You could go through after they have obviously they want to run them through the auction without the engine light on. So they're going to run that through, and then they're going to clear it. But you as a technician could go in and check and see if the if there is a code in there. So it can be useful for that for sure. So if we were to pop in here, and of course with this vehicle, no codes present in there. We didn't have a problem at the time. So yeah. So let's go live on the tool, talk about a couple more things right here. All right, so first thing I want to pop in and do is go into repair information. I'll show you the example of that calibration ID. So, for example, 2004 Subaru Outback with a 4-cylinder, leather interior, sedan, wagon, doesn't matter. This vehicle, okay. Number one code on this is PO420, which is CAT code. Very common on these, as evidenced by the repair orders. But we would do a ton of these. And they figured out that they could do a reflash to remedy this problem. So it's not actually under technical bulletins, under a campaign. So there's an OEM campaign that they did on this, and it says Subaru of America has determined that vehicles affected by the service program require ECM programming. Under certain unique driving patterns, such as a slight on-off throttle application repeated in a short period of time after a high load like uphill driving, the temperature in a vehicle's catalytic converter can rise beyond its designated design limits. If left uncorrected, this condition may eventually damage the catalytic converters. Note, this does not require the replacement of catalytic converters unless diagnostic trouble code PO420 is found during the reprogramming process outlined in this bulletin. Catalytic converter damage has occurred and resulted in a condition the check engine light will illuminate and to alert the driver of a malfunction. PO420 indicates catalytic converter damage has occurred and replacement is necessary. So this condition is a software issue and has no impact on vehicle emissions or drivability. And then it involves reprogramming the ECM. Now, that's a really long way of saying we really leaned out the mixture a lot on the car in order to get our gas mileage. Whether they'll say that or not, but that's what it was. So we're going to richen up the mixture a little bit, because I will tell you, we got a ton of people coming in after we did this and said, hey, my mileage just went through the toilet. And that's because they richened up the mixture. So it wasn't as lean and they weren't burning out as many cats. Because I know my dealership for sure was one of the ones we got audited all the time for replacing so many cats under warranty, but they were all legit. You know, it's not like we were trying to pull one over on them. It's just their cats were not good. And they gave us tests to do and they failed all the tests. So yeah, they needed cats. So anyways, how this brings me to calibration IDs and things like that. It's going to say, first it's going to say check for codes. Then it's going to say, in order to find the flash file, we're going to need to go down to vehicle information. And then we're going to do the cal ID. So we want to have the first 8 digits of the calibration identification. And then you will need it down here when you go to flash the computer. So you'd actually plug in the cal ID here and then hit search. It would pull the vehicle up. It would pull down the right reflash file, and then you'd be able to flash it. So that was just one reason we use that. They went from that to, they actually went to part number, computer part numbers now. But you can still check the cal IDs. Sometimes there was different TSPs you would need to use to check it as to whether or not, you know, it was applicable to that vehicle or something like that. So that's how you would know when it's on the latest software version. All right. So that's that. Let's pop into our OBD Direct. So in order to get here, by the way, refresher, or if you haven't watched the previous video, on Snap-on tool anyways, we have Scanner and we have OBD Direct. So Scanner is going to be your OEM side. It's going to access all the different modules on the vehicle. But if you want to go into the generic OBD-II side, you need to go to OBD Direct. And then we'll do diagnose. And I'm scanning a real vehicle. And then we'll go to start communication. It's going to detect my little scanner simulator down here. All right. And you see we got one ECU, and then there's the VIN. Continue. And then you'll see it looks a little bit different. So this one does not have mode 5, and it does have mode 10. And it has 3 mode 9s in there. So it's just going to depend on, like I said, the manufacturer and what they say. So if we go into test mode 6 and 7, we go to mode 6 for onboard monitored. And let's see what supported tests we have. All right, so there's my oxygen sensors, right? Remember how I said mode 5 kind of rolled up into 6 now? So there's my oxygen sensor test. Bank 1, sensor 2. Catalyst monitor, EGR monitor, EVAP monitor. So this one has some different thresholds. So this is how we can tell if the cap's off, because it's a certain threshold, right? So EVAP monitor for cap off, EVAP monitor for 90 thousandths, which would be a gross leak, and then EVAP monitor for 20 thousandths would be a very small leak. Purge flow, oxygen sensor heaters, and then all my misfires down. So those are all the different tests that you could walk through. It doesn't do a overall misfire on this particular one, but we see different counts, right? So 0 to 65,000. Is it enabled? Is it ready? That sort of thing. We can go into mode 6 for that. Mode 7, DTC is detected during the last drive. So that's going to be nothing in this case because we wouldn't have any codes unless it had codes detected in the last drive cycle. Mode 8, request control of onboard monitor systems. It's only going to give us a couple. Actually, in that case, it's not even supported. So never mind. Read vehicle identification. So that'll be things like my VIN, my CAL ID, CAL verification number, etc., engine serial number. So if we want to do the VIN, it should pull the VIN. Yeah, there's the VIN right there. Ignition cycle counter. I wonder if that goes. Not supported, right? So if it's not supported by the vehicle, it'll tell you. And since this is kind of like a universal thing, it's not really going to be a scan tool dependent. It's going to be vehicle dependent. In-use performance tracking. Again, we can see the history of my monitors and things. So different ignition cycle counters, things of that nature. Additional vehicle information. So this will actually give me common supported vehicle information, and that'll give me also the CAL ID and the CAL verification in there. So there's the VIN, there's the CAL right there. So if you ever need the VIN and you can't read the plate for some reason, you can always pop in there and do it that way. And then, of course, mode 10, we're not going to have anything there because it doesn't have any codes. So those are our modes through there. There's another thing I want to mention. Actually, there's a couple more things I want to mention with this. So also in OBD Direct, I want to mention, if you have a snap-on tool, you can go into OBD training mode. You don't have to be hooked up to a car. It's an embedded simulator. You hit start communication, and then it's going to automatically detect and pretend it's hooked up to a car. All right, so we see, here's the protocol we're using. Here's the ECU. Here's the VIN. We'll hit continue, and then there's my training mode. So it doesn't give you all the modes, so we're missing like mode 10. We have mode 5 in this one, and 2 mode 9s instead of 3. But it gives you a basic gist of that, and then we can go through troubleshooter as well. Go to engine, and then we see we can get code tips, parameter descriptions, guidelines, etc. So there's a lot of stuff that I can look at in here. So let's see, that is OBD check there. I think we can also do a health check as well. So an OBD health check is going to be a quick code check, clear codes, readiness monitors, etc. So that's available in there. Just kind of does a really quick rundown of the codes. Now there is another way we can go in and get this information as well. So let me pull up the little Chrysler here. Scan a real vehicle. Well, hello everyone on Facebook. I didn't realize we got 56 people watching on Facebook. That's way more than I've ever had. Thanks for all the shares. Thanks for all the shares and the likes. Let's see. So there's my vehicle here, 2010 Town and Country. It's going to look for fitted systems. And display fitted systems. And then if we do a code scan on a vehicle, pre-scan or otherwise, and notice I don't have any codes in my engine. That's the OEM side of the engine. And scan through all the modules that are not there. Once again, simulator. A little bit longer. I think it's got 18 it's got to go through. Almost there. Like I said, it's a simulator. I actually have a friend who has a car that's almost identical to this thing. It takes way less time. Even though it's not all that long. Still. There we go. System report's been saved. If I scroll through, so we get down here and we have our mode 3 codes show up. And then also we have our permanent codes. So if you ever have that, I need to go into mode 10 and look, you can actually pop in here and you can see if you do a pre-scan, post-scan, it'll show those mode 10 permanent codes down here. And once again, those are the ones that cannot be cleared, but I can use that as an example. And then if we go to engine, there's another way we can do this as well. So if I pop into my engine control module and go to generic functions, I can also flip over into that OBD-II side as well. I got my freeze frame, readiness monitors, trouble codes, cal IDs, etc. So a lot of useful information in here, as well as mode 6. And then one more thing with mode 6, because I know Ford folks really liked using mode 6 there for a while. Probably still do. But let's say I had a misfiring truck and I wanted to take a look at the data. So I'm going to go into my ECU data display, and go to my misfire data. What we actually did a few years ago was that instead of just having the manufacturer's data in there, we took the OBD-II data as well, the generic data out of mode 6, and put that in here as well. So this wouldn't actually be moving, it'd be a static number. But misfires on the current drive cycle, and then average misfires last 10 drive cycles. Remember how we saw that in that mode 6 data there? So we just actually brought it over and merged it with the other data to kind of keep it all together. So that's another enhancement. That was probably over 5 years ago we did that, but that way I don't have to flip back and forth. It's all right there, right on the screen. All right. So that is OBD-II. Hopefully you picked up a few more nuggets this week. If you didn't watch the first one, go back and watch the first one from last week, and that'll give you the more information on the other modes. And yeah, that'll do it. And with that, that is our time here today. So make sure you tune in for new diagnostic content every week. We will be premiering a new video every Wednesday at 7 p.m. UK time. So make sure you check it out on the YouTube channel. If you're watching, well, of course, you would be watching this on YouTube, but make sure you subscribe, thumbs up, ring the little notification bell so you know anytime we post new content. And it's youtube.com/SnapOnDiagnosticsUK. With that, time for questions. If you have any questions, just feel free. Once again, if you're watching this on a premiere, just leave it in the live chat and we'll answer those. Otherwise, leave a comment under the video and we will get to those as we monitor those comments as well. So I'd like to thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day to learning a little bit more about how you might be able to be more efficient at diagnosing vehicles using some of the information that we've given you today. Hopefully we'll see you next week. Hopefully you can watch and see you on any of our other videos. Have a good week, have a good night, and take care.